translate somewhat.
There's also your work with Buddhist Global Relief.
Oh, that's very important too. Yeah. About 2008, that's 4 years ago, we established an organization called Buddhist Global Relief. Myself, together with some of my students and Dharma friends. Good that you brought this report here. Yeah, we decided that we wanted to show how to put the practice of, or to put the value of compassion into practice. And so we formed this organization, Buddhist Global Relief, in order to address the problem of poverty and social injustice around the world. Then we had to find a specific focus point for the organization. And so what we decided to deal with is the problem of global hunger and chronic malnutrition. We started off with, in late 2008, with a few pilot projects, mainly in the Buddhist countries of Southeast Asia, Burma, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. And then after those projects, we started developing more and more projects, so that now, at present, in our 4th year of existence, we have about 50 projects. We've completed about 50 projects altogether, ranging from Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Burma, Sri Lanka, to India, then going across to Africa, countries like Niger, Kenya, Malawi, South Africa, to Haiti, the island in the Caribbean, and several projects in the United States. And not only do we try to address hunger directly through food distribution to people who are suffering from chronic hunger, but also now we try to address some of the underlying roots or causes of poverty and malnutrition. And what we found is quite prominent as a cause of malnutrition is the subordinate status of girls and women in many of the traditional cultures. And so several of our projects are intended to provide girls the opportunity to attend school. We have a project, an ongoing project in Cambodia, partnering with an organization that works in Cambodia called Lotus Outreach, whereby you see there are girls in very poor families who are being pressured by their families to leave school in order to work to earn more to support the families. And so if the girls are forced out of school, they'll have to do very low-level menial work, working in the fields or in factories, and many of them will probably get pushed into brothels, into the sex business. And so what we do through Lotus Outreach, we provide offerings of food, regular grants of food to their families, on condition that the families allow the girls to remain in school. And we've had this project going on since 2009, now 3.5 years, and some of those girls who started off benefiting from the project in high school, 50 of the girls, in fact, have now gone on to college, to start college. Okay, so that's one way in which we seek to combat hunger, is providing more opportunities for girls to complete their education. And when girls complete their education, then they will have much more control over their own reproduction, so that they'll have fewer children, smaller families to feed. They'll have a better understanding of nutrition, so they'll know how to feed their children. And they'll also be able to work at better paying jobs, so that they'll earn more for their families. Another type of project that we sponsor is teaching farmers, particularly women farmers, ecologically sustainable methods of agriculture, so that they can use the small plots of land that they have to grow more crops more abundantly in ways which make much less demands on the natural environment. We have projects like this in Cambodia, in Vietnam, in 2 countries in Africa, Kenya and Malawi. And also in the United States, we've been supporting some organizations dedicated to ecological agriculture. Let me just refresh. Yeah, then another type of project that we support is in India. There is a large Buddhist population. These are people who had formerly been in the social class that they call the untouchables or the outcasts. People who were regarded as so low within the social system that a person within the established Hindu system would not have any social relations with them. And many of these people, starting in the 1950s, because they found that they were being oppressed by the Hindu social system, so they formally left Hinduism and they embraced Buddhism. Most of these people are living in the state of Maharashtra, centered around the city of Nagpur. And there's a Buddhist nun from Australia who has been working in the untouchable, former untouchable community in Nagpur. Her name is Sister Yeshi, and she's established an organization called the Bodhicitta Foundation. And the purpose of the Bodhicitta Foundation is to provide these poor children and women with opportunities to attend school, to learn English, which is very useful in the Indian job market, to learn various trades and skills for types of occupations so that they can get better jobs, to give them training in personality development, anger management, and meditation, and to give the women, the mature women, also training in personality development and in learning simple arts and crafts so that they could earn more for their families. So we've established quite a fruitful long-term relationship with this Bodhicitta Foundation in India. And now what we've been doing every year for the last 3 years as a way to earn funds for our projects, this started in, originally we were based in the northeast of the United States, in New York and New Jersey. So in 2010, we came up with the idea of using a group walk, as a means to earn funds to support our projects. So we had one walk that fall in a park in southern New Jersey. We had about 50 people participating. And then we raised quite a bit of money. I think it was about $36,000 through that walk. And what we do to encourage people to donate, we put up on a website called First Giving, we put up pages and then we disseminate information over the internet about the walks so that people can contribute to the walkers to support the walk. Okay, this was the first walk in 2010. Then in 2011, during the summer, I was staying in Michigan. And so the people from Buddhist Global Relief in New York, they organized their walk in New York City, in Riverside Park in New York. But since I was living in Michigan, a few Buddhists from Michigan came to see me, and we decided to organize a parallel walk outside Ann Arbor, Michigan. But at that time, Bhante Guna Buddha, and his mother is a fully ordained nun, a bhikshuni. Her name is Santusika. They decided to organize another walk in the South Bay of San Francisco. And so that the fall of 2011, we had 3 walks going on. In New York City, outside Ann Arbor, Michigan, and in the South Bay of San Francisco. Their walk was the longest. They'd walked 18 miles from starting San Jose and ending up in Palo Alto, was it? Okay, now we come to the fall of 2012. This year we had altogether 12 walks. We had, in the United States, 9 walks. Connecticut, New York City, Michigan, Chicago, Seattle, the city of San Francisco, the San Francisco South Bay, Los Angeles, and then just this past Thursday in Escondido, which is close to San Diego. We had a monastic gathering that week, last week, and then all the monastics, the monks and nuns, participated in this walk. So we had about 45 monks and nuns walking through the streets of Escondido, with a few lay people also joined us. Okay, so there were 9 walks in the USA. In England, there was a group that supports BGR, and they organized a walk in Yorkshire in England. And then what moved us most was that in Asia, 2 of the groups that we are supporting organized solidarity walks. One was this group in Cambodia, Lotus Outreach, the girls who received the food donations through our grants. They organized a walk. And then the Indian children connected with the Bodhicitta Foundation, they organized a walk in India. And so in the year 2013, we'll also certainly be holding a walk in Los Angeles, and we really do hope that you will join us on that walk and help to mobilize some of your adult relatives, your parents, and other adults as well to join us.
Just 3 or 4 miles, though.
Yeah, don't be afraid.
Not a marathon.
Yeah, it won't be a marathon, yeah. Yeah, these are brochures about Buddhist Global Relief. And back in New York, I have many Chinese brochures. If somebody wants to act as a liaison person, we could send you a whole batch of those brochures in Chinese that you could distribute to the elders connected with this temple. And Tom here, he is the coordinator for the walk coordinator for the Los Angeles area, so anybody wants to assist in this?
I'll be happy to talk to anyone who's interested.
Yeah.
We'll be around this whole year, so hopefully we'll work together this coming year.
And if you know anybody in the middle or northern California area, around San Francisco, Berkeley, San Jose, that area, just ask them to get in contact with Bhante Guna here. Do you have any questions about the Buddhist Global Relief Project that I just mentioned? Any other questions on things about Buddhism you'd like cleared up? Please.
Do you have any youth that work with your organization?
There are young people that do help us. We don't have them organized formally as a youth group, but there are young people that come and help regularly, especially when we have events like the walk. There are some younger people who come. In the New York area, we have like younger people setting up the registration desks, acting as guides to the people turning up to participate in the walk.
We had one little baby in arms who hadn't even started walking yet. Her father carried her on the whole walk this time in LA. And I should mention, Bhante, yesterday we had a group of Sri Lankan college students that were here.
Yeah.
And Ajahn Guna and I met with them for probably, 2 or 3 hours. Yeah. And they, at the same age as you guys. 4.5, but who's counting?
And some of them were participated in the walk that we held in Santa Monica. This was on the 20th, October 20th. Yeah, that's where they first met me, and then they said that they wanted to come to speak to me. But yesterday I was pretty much knocked out all day. So they spoke with Bhante Guna and Tom.
They had a lot of questions too. It'll be interesting for you guys to meet with them and talk to them, because they're from the Sri Lankan Buddhist tradition. But they have a lot of good questions, and they're young people who are asking, how does a young person engage with Buddhism? Very good questions, and particularly in the United States. Because there's so many things that distract us and take us in a different direction, you know.
Maybe, yeah, please.
Oh, what happens if you relocate and then there is no Buddhist community in this new location? Like, what as a practitioner, or how do you cope with that?
Of course, it depends on where you relocate to, but it seems to me that there are many, below the radar, there are many people reading Buddhism, practicing meditation, interested in Buddhism. So, you know, if you use with Google, you know, probably if I had Google back in 1966, I wouldn't have had to wait until I got to California to find a Buddhist teacher. But if you just put, say, you move into a new town, you just put the name of that town and Buddhism into it, and just let Google do its work, it'll, quite possibly it will bring up some information for you. But supposing that you do this, it doesn't bring up any information. What I would say is that if you're strong enough, you could practice on your own, but what could be an idea, if you feel, even if you don't feel quite ready to be like the leader of a group, but there will be things like a health food store, a library, bookshop, any place where people go regularly. You could put up like a sign that there'll be Buddhist meditation group meeting. You just have it at your house, initially at your house, say Wednesday evenings, 7:30 p.m. And don't be surprised, first few weeks, you're just there alone. But slowly over time, it could be that some people start to turn up. And then, you know, you form like a little nucleus, even if it's only 3 or 4 people. But you have some people to practice together, to discuss Dharma together. If this doesn't work out, there are, you know, I'm not so sophisticated with the internet, but there are various Dharma discussion groups going on. But one has to, I have to say, one has to be a little careful with these, because I've peeked into them from time to time, and sometimes they become, the discussion becomes very, because people are able to disguise their real identity. You know, they use this avatar and a code name, so you don't know who the person really is, so people are able to spill out their insides, and sometimes these Dharma discussion groups can become quite rude. People insisting, this is the way it is, you don't understand. I can't use this language in a business.
You get the idea.
Actually, there's also the Ustream teachings that you provide
Oh,
also.
that's very good, a good suggestion too. I don't want to, yeah, not solely myself, but you can get many, many Dharma teachings over YouTube. Any particular aspect of Buddhism you're interested in, any particular Buddhist teacher, you just enter the name and you'll get at least sometimes clips, video clips of their lectures, sometimes even full, like hour-long lectures. So there's plenty of opportunities. Of course, it's always good to have contact with actual live people. But when that's not an option, then one has to find whatever one can.
But I think Bante's original suggestion about having your daily practice is really important.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I moved to Switzerland in 1994. I was in San Francisco, and I went to live there for 6 months, and it was hard. There was only one Buddhist group that I found there, and I went to visit them, and I didn't feel comfortable with them. But I kept my own practice going. And I did my meditation and having texts to read, like Bante's text. Any of these basic texts are very good, and nowadays you can have them. I have text on here too, so it's very helpful. There are ways to do it though, and the internet does make it easier if you're, as Bante says, if you're very careful.
Yeah, yeah. And you can get a lot of Dharma material on the internet now.
Also, don't move there.
And if one can,
Yeah.
it's always best to choose a place where one will have opportunities to meet, to make Dharma connections.
California is we're very fortunate. We have probably more choices than what to do with, and we have many choices in terms of.
So really, if it's a priority, then you you factored in.
Yeah.
How do you practice Buddhism?
It's a pretty big question. No, I have to say, the question is too big.
Justin, do you mind if I ask you to clarify? But do you mean that how is Buddhism practiced, or do you mean how does Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi practice Buddhism?
How does Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi practice Buddhism?
Well, how do I practice?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I try to divide my time between both meditation and, study and translation. That's been my primary activity over the years. In earlier years, when I was living in monasteries where there were groups of monks together, then we would have like a daily recitation together, which is quite helpful. It builds up, well, it generates a certain kind of spiritual energy. Now, since though I live in a monastery, but I have my own dwelling place, so I just do my recitation alone. But I try to have like a period in the morning, which, like about an hour in the morning, which I just devote to some recitation and then to sitting meditation. Then during the day, I've been doing, well, I used to do translation, now I've finished that, but now I've been doing reading, and this Buddhist global relief work takes usually about an hour or two per day recently. Then in the afternoon, a period of, again, of either study or some work connected with Buddhist global relief. Then the late afternoon, early evening, I have another hour for recitation, meditation. And then the evening, I usually do just some light reading and then another devotional practice before going to bed. But that's a monastic routine. You have to find, living in the lay life, you have a lot of things to balance out in your life. But as I said at the beginning, you have to, or you should, make the determination, make it like a real vow in front of the Buddha to reserve a half an hour, at least a half an hour. Of course, if you could extend it to a full hour, that's better. But a half hour of time, which is your Dharma time.
I think I could reword my question now because I think I said it wrong. How did Buddhism benefit you? There you go.
Oh, okay. The ways are manifold, but I say one of the biggest helps that I got from Buddhism was controlling my temper. I used to get angry and upset very easily. And I also used to be very dogmatic about my beliefs. So even when I met my first Buddhist teacher when I was in graduate school, and I was just reading a little bit about Buddhism, and I would come across some statement, and my teacher's view on Buddhism contradicted what I had read. I would always assume that what I had read was right and my teacher was wrong, and then I would argue with him and insist on my point of view. And sometimes he had to put me down pretty strongly to crush that demon of self-righteousness. But then he gave me a piece of advice which was very, very useful for me. He said, every day, at the very beginning of the day, you should reflect, I might be right, or I might be wrong. It's not so important to be right. There's nothing to dread in being wrong, but what's important is to find out what is true and what is false. And so I would recite that every day for maybe a month, and it helped to drive out that sense of self-righteousness from my mind. So I became much less insistent about always being right in arguments. And then what proved to be extremely helpful in getting rid of the anger, that anger and upset, is doing the practice of, we call it metta meditation, the meditation on loving kindness, wishing that all beings will be well and happy. So when doing this meditation, it's not that it changes you overnight, but it's like gradually, little by little, transforming the mind. So before long, when you get into situations which are tense and difficult, I found I wasn't getting angry. Just I was able to look at situations objectively. If I got blamed, of course sometimes I would feel the sting a little bit, particularly if it's my sister who's blaming me. Because they know all of your weak spots. But most of the time I would just be able to stay fairly calm and even-minded in these difficult situations. Yeah, and another useful advice, maybe you could integrate this into your program, little Dharma program, and this is advice that I often give to others, is to find, say, 3 faults within yourself, and then formulate a little statement to counter those faults. To give an example, this I actually used over many years to deal with the anger. It's reflection on patience. So you make the resolution, may I remain patient and even-minded under all conditions, no matter how difficult they might be. You just make that without giving way to anger and without getting upset. So if you just write this down on paper at first, make 3 statements like that. If you have a tendency to be, say, miserly, and you want to fight against that and become generous, you can make the resolution, may I always be generous and open-handed, ready to give to others in accordance with their need. If you have a tendency to be too talkative, you can make the resolution, may I always control my speech so that my words will be deep and meaningful. If you have a tendency to give up easily, you can make the resolution, may I be fixed and unshakable in my determination to do what is good despite the obstacles. Just, you can reflect on different weaknesses and make the resolution to overcome those weaknesses. Find any kind of wording that works for you, and just don't be too ambitious. Don't start off trying to take 10, because if you start off with 10, you get discouraged easily. It's too much to deal with. If you start off with only 1, maybe it's not enough. But just take 3 sentences, and either at the beginning or towards the end of your Dharma period, recite those sentences out loud. First you could read them from the paper till they get impressed on the mind. Then just recite them from memory every day. And you'll find that it's going to really gradually, over time, change the whole way your mind and your personality works. I think this is really the way the Buddha achieves Buddhahood. You know, he didn't start off as a 10th-stage bodhisattva, but he started off just like an ordinary person, but he started making these determinations to develop wholesome qualities. You know, probably initially in the early stages, many, many lives ago, he had to struggle against anger, or against getting upset easily, maybe being greedy, being overly talkative, whatever, being miserly. But through practice, little by little, he transformed himself into the Buddha.
We talked a lot about the importance of kind of inner transformation, and through Buddhist global relief and other kinds of organizations like that, kind of speaks to the importance of the practice of Buddhism as in stepping away from the